Hey guys, it's Amanda from Designs by Amanda K, and for this video I am comparing the Tombow Dual Brush Pens to the Karin Brushmarker Pro. So let's get to it. Alright, so Tombow versus Karin. Which one wins? I did a reader survey a few weeks ago, my email subscribers, asking them what specific questions they had directly related to Tombow versus Karin question. And the top questions I got were, how are their tips? How do they compare in colors? How do they blend? And how durable are they? So I'm going to get into all of that right now. Okay, so the first question was, how do their tips compare? So let's just do a side-by-side real quick. So there's the Karin, there's Tombow. So the difference you can see here is that Karin has kind of a fatter base that goes out at a cone, and Tombow is just like a slick taper. What does that mean as far as like writing with them? Karin has the very slightest edge over Tombow when it comes to getting cleaner downstrokes and upstroke transitions. It's very minimal at best, but that would be the difference between the two tips. So next on the list, how do their colors compare? Karin brush markers, these over here, come in 60 different colors plus 12 neon colors. The Tombow Dual Brush Pens, they have technically 107 colors. Their Pro Box, I think, is listed as 108, but that includes the colorless blender, so it's 107 colors. So let's talk about their ink real quick before we swatch these. So both of the markers have water-based ink, and that means that they are both ideal for blending, either with water or with their blender pens. The big difference, though, is in how their ink is distributed to the paper, and I think that's important to note. So Tombow Dual Brush Markers, they have a standard ink cartridge inside of here, just like with any marker that you find today. Karin, if you can see, they have liquid ink. I don't know if you can catch that going back and forth here. But it's 2.4 mils of liquid ink. And what makes that special is that as long as, the marker isn't completely empty, you're going to get the same consistent color saturation. Now, I have not personally used a Karin marker to their end of life, but the saturation is a claim that comes directly from the manufacturer itself. I have used a Tombow Dual Brush Pen to the end of its life, and just like with every other marker you've probably ever used up in your life, the ink does get splotchy and inconsistent. Another important point with the ink is that the liquid ink in Karin markers makes them bleed through thin paper. Now this is HP 32 paper. It's not really a whole lot of bleed. I mean, there's definitely a ghosting, but there's ghosting with the Tombow as well. But on any thin paper, so like bullet journals, you will definitely have some color bleeding on that, whereas with Tombow you might not. Another note, because of the liquid ink, the ink is very juicy and it takes forever to dry on paper. So keep that in mind. Now, this one for me is kind of already a little worn out, and you can see that I don't get as clean of transitions. And I'm going to talk about their durability here in just a minute. Well, that was a very sad E. Okay, well, technically that's rhodamine red, but I'm not going to write the red part. And then same with this magenta. This is also a worn, in terms of Karin, more worn because I've used it a lot. But let's look at the transitions here. So some of them are sloppy on both, but I would say overall, I mean, and it's hard to get across on camera how it feels when you write. I mean, there's definitely a difference between a fresh brush marker and one you've used several times. But overall, let me zoom in here. I get cleaner transitions. So like you can tell on, I mean, this one's a little bubbly, or a little feathery, but basically on the Karins, even though the tip has like broken down a little bit, I guess is a good word for it, I still get a clean little transition here, whereas like Tombow, you can really tell it feathers out. Okay, so that brings us to our next topic, which is durability. So this was actually the top question that I received in my reader survey. Everybody wants to know, how do Karin Brushmarker Pro compare to the Tombow pens as far as the tip durability goes? So it's not a secret. I love these markers, but I mean, if you look at them the wrong way, they fray. They're very sensitive. They are a felt tip, which I feel like that's a typical thing for most markers, being made from felt, but they fray so easily if you don't use them on the right paper. So, I mean, using them on watercolor paper is a huge no-no if you want your pen tips to last. So how's that compared to Karin's? Well, Karin markers, their tips are actually nylon. So nylon is a lot more durable, and it can take more abuse. It can take rougher paper. And in fact, 99% of the time I use these Karin markers with watercolor paper, with Strathmore 400 series watercolor paper to be specific. And they've held up great. My original pack of pens that I got, that I've been using for a year now on watercolor paper, they are still in really great shape. The tips have not frayed for me. All right, so the next question, how much do they cost and where can I buy them for both? I'm going to speak on my own personal experience from purchasing and sourcing these both markers in the United States. I can't really speak to another country because I don't have that experience. But in the United States, these Tombow pens are very easy to come by. They are on Amazon. They're on Tombow.com. They are on Amazon. They're on BlickArts.com. They're in Michael's. They're in Hobby Lobby. Heck, I think Walmart was carrying them at one point. Maybe they still are. Long story short, they are very easy to find. Super easy to find. Their price point, they're usually about $3 to $3.20 a marker if you buy individual markers. If you buy in a 10-pack, then they're about $2.70 per pen, but that's regular price. You will usually find these anywhere from 30 to 50% off if you wait for a sale. And that's Tombow.com, that's Amazon, that's Michael's, that's anywhere they're sold. They will always run on sale at some point. So, I mean, that really drops that price point down significantly. So you can actually get these for fairly inexpensive. Okay, so Karin's. Now the story on these is a little bit different. So Karin markers, they come in individual packs of, I think, 12. Then they have a 26 pack, 60 pack, and the 72 pack. They are available online only. I have never seen these in a store. Please correct me if I am wrong in the United States, because I would love to find these in a store. But anyways, you can buy them on Amazon. You can buy them on BlickArts, Dick Blick Arts online. You can buy them from Marker Universe, which is actually where I purchased. I bought a 72 pack last fall. So regular price, these guys run $2 to $2.50 per pen. Sometimes you can find them on Amazon or Blick Arts for a little bit off. They're not going to be on sale as much as Tombow is, but you could find them closer to that $2 range. So their prices aren't super far off from each other. I think that's one of the misconceptions, is that Karin's are just way expensive. And maybe it seems that way because you're spending more up front to get Karin's, because I think they come in bigger packages. So it seems like they're more expensive, but when you break it down per marker, they really are about the same. But Tombow is significantly easier to come across. All right, so the next question was, how do they blend? So I'm not going to go into super full depth on the technique for blending. I do have a whole video that I did on Tombow using the blender pen, and I will link that below in the description below. And I do plan on doing another tutorial on specific blending techniques with Karin. So I'm not going to go into the techniques, but I am going to just do a really quick comparison with the colorless blenders that come in with both, and also with a paintbrush and water. Okay, so the first technique I'm going to do is with the blender pen, the colorless blenders that come with the packs. And let's just do the blue and green. So I'm just going to color a little bit of each color. See how Karin does. Okay, so that is with the blender brush. Okay, so now let's do it with water. This is actually the way that I prefer to do it. And if you follow me on Instagram, which if you're not, you should be, you will see that that's typically how I do my blending videos. All right, same deal with Karin. And that, folks, is how they blend. So they both blend beautifully. I like how they blend a little bit better with the water and a paintbrush, and I can control it better, I feel like, than with the blender pens. But moral of the story, blending, thumbs up. One more quick thing on the blending is that actually a reader asked me to bring up, and I have experienced this, is that there are some papers that Karin doesn't blend very well on, specifically cheaper watercolor paper. I'm not going to name any brands, mostly because nothing's coming to mind, but if you stick with like Canson or Strathmore or a more professional grade watercolor paper, you shouldn't have any problems. If you're using a cheap watercolor paper, you may have some difficulties getting the Karin markers to blend very well with water or their colorless blender. So that is something to keep in mind. I wanted to show you guys a couple of samples of blending work that I've done with both markers. First one's here, actually, put these out here. These are both done using these color palettes. Now at a glance, can you tell the difference between Tombow and Karin? Let me help you out here. So this one is Karin, and this one is Tombow. They are on two different types of paper. They're both Strathmore brand, but this bottom one here is a hot press watercolor paper, and it's very smooth. And this top one is Karin, and it's actually on watercolor paper. It's Canson watercolor paper for lettering. So it's not their XL watercolor paper, so it's just a little bit thinner. And then we've got some other examples here. So this is actually both markers, again, on the Strathmore hot press watercolor paper. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about that. So this bottom one is Tombow. And then this top one is Karin. On this hot press paper. This was an issue that I ran into with the Karin markers, and it's not a big issue, but it is an issue that's worth being brought up. To start with, typically when I do blending projects like this, I will fill in several letters at a time and then go back and blend. And specifically I did that down here with the Tombow markers. But one thing I found on this hot press paper from Strathmore is that I can only do like maybe one letter. I can fill in the color and then go back and blend. If I wait too long to go back to blend, I have a really hard time getting the color to lift to create the blends. Anyways, yeah, that's my experience with the hot press paper with Karin blending, which is why I typically stick with Strathmore 400 series cold press watercolor paper. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit more in depth about all of the features of the two different pens, Tombow, Karin, a few of the other questions that I was asked was which pen is best for beginners and which one is best for brush calligraphy. And I also got asked why somebody would choose one over the other. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I don't think that one is better than the other. If you are just learning brush calligraphy, if you're just a beginner, I would say start with whatever you can find and whatever you can afford, and then get the hang of using that large brush tip and go from there. I don't think that you have to rush out and buy all of the colors available in one single pen or in both of them. Just start with one and get the feel for it. Both of them are great for brush calligraphy. Both of them are great for beginners. So it's just whatever you can find and whatever is more affordable. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. You can also tap that little bell and it will give you notifications when I post a new video. So that's it for this video. I'll see you guys next time.